Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and I have several really good questions from inside the Red Raiders subscribers, so I'm going to dive right into them. The first one comes from Turtle Biscuit Boss, who asks, he says, in what areas will Texas Tech's offense improve under offensive coordinator Zach Kittley versus the old regime, and where could Tyler Shuck, assuming he starts at quarterback, see improvements due to Kittley's scheme? Yeah, that's a good question. What I like about what Kittley seems to do is it's a basic principle of, and I'm not saying it's the air raid, the classic air raid, but a derivative of the air raid. Zach Kittley coming from Cliff Kingsbury, obviously coming from Mike Leach. Basically what you're trying to do is spread the defense out horizontally and then attacking them vertically. And attacking them, getting some of your best players who are good in space in advantageous situations, basically one-on-ones with guys you know, or at least you expect, are able to beat, the defender, the corner, or the safety in those one-on-one battles, and then be able to be explosive after they get the ball. So whether that be, and you see this a lot of the slot or outside receivers getting vertical, big targets like tight ends, running backs. I mean, the whole object is to stretch the defense, find those openings, and then exploit them. I think one thing that might surprise some is that I do think, yes, while they're going to throw screens and such, like I said, really stretch defenses horizontally, they're going to attack vertically under Zach Kittley. You saw, at least with Bailey Zappi at quarterback, both at Houston Baptist and at Western Kentucky, him really be able to attack defenses vertically because of those one-on-one matchups that they were able to get, and that the receivers were able to win those matchups. So where do I see that helping Tyler Shuck? Well, just in that, I think there'll be some easier reads, some easy throws for him to make, and the guy does have a tremendous arm. I mean, Tyler Shuck possesses just very accurate, strong arms. So it's just him making the right reads and delivering the ball on time. That's what it's all about with him. So I think much has been made this offseason about the freedom that the quarterbacks are going to have at the line of scrimmage. Tyler Shuck does spend a lot of time, in the playbook, watching film, all that stuff. That's been well documented. And so I think this will give him an opportunity to show off that arm and attack defenses vertically. There were some throws he made in spring that were on point, that were really good. So if we see that on Saturdays, then Tyler Shuck could have a huge season, because he does have some really good weapons, not just in the backfield with Sir Roderick Thompson and Taj Brooks, but the Miles Price of the world, the Trey Clevelands, Jerram Bradley, the tight ends they have. So I think this offense is going to be explosive. I think it's going to put up a lot of points for sure. Tech Freak asks, did Matt Wells, former head coach, end up somewhere else, or is he taking the year off? He says he did upgrade the roster a ton. He's looking forward to all the tight ends this year in the offense. Yeah, Matt Wells did improve the culture of the program. His staff under him did really improve the roster from what he inherited. And Matt Wells, he wants to be a head coach again. He believes he can be a quality head coach at the Division I level. And so while he did have some pretty nice offensive coordinator jobs and offers at the Power 5 level, he is going to be an analyst, offensive analyst for Oklahoma, and Brett Venables there in Norman. And I think he's holding out for a head coaching gig. I think that's what he wants to do. I think that's what he believes he is and can do, and that's what he wants to do. So I would be surprised if we see Matt Wells take an offensive coordinator gig, even though they're, like I said, they've been offered to him. I think he'll be an analyst and try and get on somewhere as a head coach next. DL Vet, this is a good question. He said he wants to know what I thought of Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy's comments about OU and UT being at Big 12 meetings during Big 12 Media Day here a week or so ago. Yeah, first off, Mike Gundy's an interesting character because he comes off as kind of a guy like, I don't want to say like a jerk, but he just comes off, I'm a man, I'm 40 thing, just kind of it's entertaining. That's all I'll say this. I like that Mike Gundy seems to be sincere and he says what's on his mind. Not a lot of coach speak in respect to, you ask him a question, just be prepared that he's going to give you a real answer. And but he says he was joking after the fact, but this was after the press conference, kind of like a breakout type thing. He was answering questions and from gathered media around him, and he was asked about OU and UT being at Big 12 meetings, at Big 12 Media Day and all that, and he said, yeah, he doesn't think they should be there because they're going to the SEC. He doesn't think they should be allowed at meetings. He said Commissioner Yormark shouldn't allow them at Big 12 meetings going forward since they're leaving for the SEC. And, you know, my thoughts are he has a really good point. I mean, I think business is what it is, and I'm sure there's formalities in place where they have to be. I guess they have to be, but I understand if they barred them from it because is that good business? I mean, they're going to be in I think a competing conference, when they move on. So why are they in Big 12 meetings? That makes no sense. So I think Mike Gundy has a really good point, and he usually does on this kind of stuff. I really, like I said, I respect his candor in a world in which you don't get a lot of that in that kind of public forum. So I liked him. Texan44 says, it's probably more of a feeling, but it seems that Coach Joey McGuire had a blazing recruiting start, but he has really cooled off over the last month. He said, especially with, losing a couple decommits and, the fact that looks like Jordan Sanford might be going to Washington. Jordan Sanford's a 4-star safety at the DFW area who has visited Tech, has been a high priority target for Tech, and he visited Washington. He's got a couple crystal ball predictions for him there, and he has an announcement date of August 4th. So Texan44 saying it seems like Tech has cooled off. Well, I guess you could say that. I mean, they picked up a trio of commits here in that time with the decommits you were asking about. So, I mean, they have 23 commits. So, which, to put that in perspective, Texas Tech hasn't signed 23 high school commits in one class since 2016. So, they don't have a lot of room. I mean, they're going to oversign because they can. I don't know how much. I don't know what walk-ons are going to offer scholarships or how it's all going to work out in terms of the 85 scholarship limit. But, they have 23 commits. There's only so much room. So, things have cooled off a little bit just because they're so far ahead. And you asked if I thought they'd still be a top 30 class. Yeah, I big time fully expect them to be a top 30 class. They're ranked number 16 in the country right now. I know they were as high as number 1 at one point, number 2, but nobody ever realistically thought that's where they would land. But I have thought anywhere from 18 to 30. Really, I see them being somewhere from the 20 to mid 20 when it's all said and done. And you also asked if I thought they could sign another 4-star or 2. Yeah, I mean, or land another 4-star or 2. They're still offering guys. They offered a 4-star corner. His name escapes me right now. Out of California. I mean, he has over 20 offers, so I don't know how realistic that is. But Marcel Yates, secondary coach, obviously has a lot of experience on the West Coast, so I don't think that offer was for no reason. But it was a recent offer, and I've learned not to underestimate Joey McGuire and the staff, and specifically when it comes to recruiting, but in all aspects. So this is a good class. I guess it's semantics, but you could say it's cooled off, but it's because the spots have filled up. You only have so much room in these classes, and he's already got committed, despite the decommits, more guys than they've signed since 2016, at least from the high school ranks. So, yeah, they're doing just fine with recruiting, and better than that, they're crushing it with recruiting. And I wouldn't really. You asked me, so I'll give you my opinion. I wouldn't say that they've cooled off at all, to be honest. All right, Apros53 has a question about this new targeting rule that's been announced and was talked about at Big 12 Media Day, and basically that it's kind of freaking him out. And I understand that because the gist of the rule is it's a targeting rule, and it's basically a defenseless player rule, and it has to do with quarterbacks and passing. And we're all familiar with a late hit on a quarterback or whatever, and that being a penalty. But this is targeting on a quarterback who still has the ball in his hands. This new rule or note addition to the rule is that if they're looking downfield, like going through their progressions, and they get hit, that's a defenseless player. Or basically any aspect, any way that a quarterback, if he's not in the actual motion of throwing, or if he hadn't taken off as a runner, it's like hitting him is targeting, which I really have a hard time understanding. So you're not allowed to put pressure on the quarterback anymore. Like I think, and you also Afros, you also mentioned that basically people aren't freaking out as much as he thinks we should be. And I think it's because we're all waiting to see is like, how are they going to implement this? Are they really going to call this? Because if you call this, then it's not football anymore. It's really not. It really has become a glorified 7-on-7. If you really call that to the letter of the law, I mean, it's not the same sport. So I'm already kind of against targeting, but that's more of like a get off my lawn, like, this is a violent sport, let them be violent. I get why they've changed the game a lot in terms of for legal reasons and all the ramifications of brain trauma and brain injuries that we've seen from players, from retired players, and I get it. But this is going a step beyond that. I mean, you have to allow your defense to put pressure on the quarterback. All the rules are already set up, in the offense's advantage. So I really expect that this isn't going to be called the way they were outlining it, because it can't be. If it is, and if it's just where like some random phantom call, I mean, especially if it's like late in the game and one of the blue bloods or one of the bigger schools is about to get upset by a smaller school and they call that on the smaller school, I mean, people are going to lose their minds. It used to be like if it was, say, Iowa State against Texas or something and they were about to beat them and they called that and Texas won the game that way. I don't know if that's what they call it with UT and OU leaving. UT fans would probably argue the opposite, that's going to be biased against them. So we'll see how all this shakes out. But if they follow it by the letter of the law, Afros, then this is a travesty. If they do as I suspect and it's not really going to be called, but it's just part of the fine print, then it's just kind of a shrug, which is why you haven't seen a whole lot of talk about it yet. But it'll be interesting to track this season for sure. All right, final question comes from 78 Tech, who says, Texas Tech has had no commitments from Dallas South Oak Cliff as of late. He says, have they offered any? If so, is Coach Emmett Jones, who was the head coach at South Oak Cliff and is still very close with the program, has he, lost some credibility there? No, Coach Jones hasn't lost any credibility with South Oak Cliff. He's very tight with the coaching staff. Just as a background, my dad was an all-state defensive lineman at South Oak Cliff way back in the day. So I follow South Oak Cliff closely. It's important to my family. Coach Jones and I have talked about some of the history at South Oak Cliff, and he bleeds their colors. He's very in tight with Dallas South Oak Cliff and the program, the coaching staff, and maybe just hadn't been the right fit with some of the players. There's a lot that goes into it, but Coach Jones and this staff in general, with a lot of programs around the state, but definitely South Oak Cliff with Coach Jones, I mean, they're going to hear first about it, and they're already going to know about a lot of these guys coming up, which is why you see these guys that have zero, like almost no profiles, then they ascend after Tech is offered and they're committed to 4 stars, and then here come Michigan, Ohio State, Stanford, or whatever, after Tech's already been talking to them for half a year. So, my advice, it's your fandom. Worry about it if you want to. My advice would be worry about something else. Coach Jones and South Oak Cliff still have a very strong bond. He was with them a lot during their championship run too. Their state championship run last year. Like, he got to go hang with them. He's like a part of the program. He's a part of the story at South Oak Cliff for sure, for turning around that program. So with that, I want to thank you for watching. Great questions as always, and until next time.